Hello everybody and welcome to Tamriel. Today's video is going to be covering Mod Organizer. If you haven't seen the first video that I put out on modding Skyrim, you should go check that out. Link will be in the description and in the small icon up in the top. And that goes over how to use Nexus Mod Manager in order to install mods into Skyrim. Today's video is going to be covering Mod Organizer, which is a slightly more advanced tool, but is much more effective at managing mods in my opinion. So to get started, let's head over to my desktop. Hello everybody. And the first step we're going to do is we're going to go and get Mod Organizer. So the first thing you want to do is go over to the Nexus Mods page with Mod Organizer. This is for Skyrim Special Edition. And what you want to do, make sure you're logged in at the top. As you can see, I am. And the first step is to click Download Manual. And then you'll get a link here. We're just going to download manually. We're going to get the file here. And all we're going to do is we're going to move it to a desktop I have already set up on my desktop. So we're going to run the installer. And we're going to wait for it to boot up. It's a pretty simple process to actually get this set up. So we're going to do it. And we're going to see how it goes. So if we come back over to my desktop, which we can do here. There we go. So we're going to go and install it. That's great. Next, and now we're going to decide the folder. So I'm going to go over to my desktop and click Mod Organizer because that's where I want to install it, just for the purposes of this demonstration. So I'm going to hit install, wait for it to go. It's going to download some basic files and folders and things that it needs. Shouldn't take too long, but it's important that it does because it needs it to run. So while we wait for that to go, what we can do is head over to Mod Organizer's page again. That's on Chrome. And we're actually going to go to a different page now. We're going to go and get loot again. So if you remember from the first video, we downloaded loot to sort our mod order, our mod load order. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to grab loot again. So we're just going to click the installer and we're going to download that as well, just for future reference. And then once we've done that, we can head back over to our desktop. It's still downloading some files stuff, but that's okay because once this is up and running, it will be much easier to work with. Cool. So now that's done, we can hit Run Mod Organizer. And as you can see, the file on my desktop now has all of these folders, which is perfect. So if we run it, give it a second to load. It's going to ask if we want to use it in portable mode or just create a new instance. The portable install helps if you want to run multiple copies. I am actually going to use this for this example. So we're going to hit portable. You'll see the logo boot up. And then once we've got that here, it will scan your system for your game. As you can see, it's got my Skyrim Special Edition install right here. So I'm going to click that. And then we're going to have a couple of other things to go through on the first launch. So just bear with it because it takes some time. As you can see here, it's going to show a basic tutorial on how to use stuff. I highly recommend, if you haven't used Mod Organizer before, that you go through the tutorial. I'm going to skip that for now because I'm going to explain the basics to you now. So the first thing that comes up is Mod Organizer is not set up to handle NXM links. That's Nexus Mod links. So when you go to the Nexus site, and I can show you over here, when you go to the Nexus site and you pick a mod, and you see you get the Download NMM button, that's what allows Mod Organizer to download files for you. So we're going to switch back over and we're going to handle yes. Because if you're using Mod Organizer, you won't need to use Nexus Mod Manager anyway. And the first thing you get greeted with is this window. So I'll go over a couple of the basic things you need to look at. On the left here, you have your mods list. On the right here, you have your plugins section, which shows all of the current plugins that are activated. So very similar to how Nexus Mod Manager did it. So that's important to know. You've got the data directory. Now, Mod Organizer is very unique in the fact that it doesn't actually store any mod files in your actual Skyrim directory. So what that means is say for instance you have some mods that mess up and you want to remove those, you won't have to try and find all the files in your Skyrim install. It'll all just be completely separate, which is super useful for if you mess around with a lot of mods or you change mods around a lot. So this is the main tool that I use when I'm making mod videos and stuff like that. So if we expand this out, you can see all of the BSA files, ESM files, and it shows the whole directory for everything in my Skyrim install folder. Next up, you have saves. So as you can see here, there's a ton of saves here. This is all my save games in the game. So you see at the moment it's saying not working due to some save game weirdness. That's fine, don't worry about that. But you can see that it lists all of my characters. It lists the save number, the level, the location, etc, etc. Super helpful because under this missing ESP section that you see, if you are trying to load a save file and there's a mod missing, you don't have to load the game and wait for it to tell you what mods are missing. You can just look at this list and you can see which mod is missing, and then you just enable it again, which is super handy. The next one is the download section. So this is where all of the downloaded mod files will show up, which is super helpful to see. So let's get started in getting a mod installed. So we want to make sure that we've got our settings set up. So change this how you like. Make sure all your paths are set up. Make sure you can have it automatically log into the Nexus. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set this up right now because it's useful to have. You can start up your Steam stuff. If you've already got a Steam install, you shouldn't have to do this. You can check for all the plugins installed. You shouldn't really need to mess around with this. And it's got some workarounds as well in case something doesn't work. So I'm going to hit OK now. And that's saved my settings. Next up, you have two tools. You have the ini editor and the configurator. So some mods, like Skyrim Floral Overhaul, encourage you to change some settings in your ini files. Those are the files saved in your My Games directory in your documents. What you can do with Nexus Mod Manager is edit a separate copy of these, and it will overwrite the one that's saved separately. So you don't have to go and fiddle with your regular vanilla install. You can just do it through here and it will save a completely separate copy of it. So as you see here, there are a bunch of settings you can change, and that's good. So then you have the configurator, which is kind of the same thing, but it's a bit more localized. So it allows you to pick different sections of the ini files. So for instance, we'll go with grass, and then you can see the basic settings you can change. So you can actually change it through here instead of looking through the whole ini file, which is kind of handy to have. You can also hit advanced and it shows you all of the settings and allows you to change those like that. So if there's a particular setting you're looking for and you can't see it in the basic view, try looking in the advanced view and you can change it there. Next up is the executables. So this list is very important. It's similar to how Nexus Mod Manager works, where you have the drop-down list where you can select what mod program you want to use. In this instance, we've got a couple of things. So we've got Special Edition Launcher, the Creation Kit, and also Loot. Now you'll remember that we set up Loot previously in our Nexus Mod Organizer video. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you go and watch that because that shows how to install Loot and get it set up. Because I already have a previous install, it already finds it in my folders, and so it's already ready to go, which is very handy when you're setting up. Next up is the Profiles section. So the Profiles section is the best feature, in my opinion, about Mod Organizer. So say, for instance, you're playing a vanilla game. Okay, you've had no mods installed whatsoever, and you want to install a bunch of mods for a vampire playthrough. What you can do, you can hit create here, and you can name it Vampire Playthrough. This is very similar to the profiles on Nexus Mod Manager, but this works way differently. So you can set it up with the default game settings, or you can leave that blank and just use the settings you've set up already. And you'll see here now we have two profiles, one called Default, which is vanilla, and one called Vampire Playthrough, which is this one here. What you can do is you can check local save games. So what that does is, for a new profile, any save games that are linked to that profile will not show up whenever you load the game unless you're running this profile. So that makes it handy so that you don't accidentally launch a save game that has no mods installed for a different profile. So I like to check that, and you can see it's separate for each profile. So the default game doesn't have local save games. So that's all of my characters all together. And the vampire playthrough does. What you can also do is load the transfer saves option. And what that lets you do is it lets you select each character and move them. So you can see here I have, 7 characters that are global. This means that no matter what profile I'm running, these characters will show up. What I can do is I can select a character, say for instance Test, and move it to this profile. And what that does is it now removes it from the global characters, which means that every time I launch Skyrim it won't show up, and it'll only show that for whenever I'm using the vampire playthrough profile. So that's just a good example of how that works, and you can move it back. You can even make a copy of it. So what I can do is I can just make a copy of it there, and it will show up there. Very handy to have, but it's up to you if you want it or not. So I'm going to click Done now. And that's all we need for the profiles for now. You can copy profiles and change them later. So if you want to have a vampire playthrough and then a werewolf playthrough, but you've got similar mods, you can just copy the profile, make a brand new one. So you'll see there it goes. And if we click the drop down now, you can see we have a vampire playthrough. And at the moment, nothing's going to change because there's nothing different between them. But later on, when we go to add mods, we'll do it on the vampire playthrough page, which will make it a bit easier to understand. The next button on the list is the Nexus Network button. So if we click that, what it'll actually do is it will load a brand new copy of the Nexus Mod page. So you can see here, it's loaded it here. And that's basically all you have to do. So if you want to look at the mods on the Nexus currently, you just click that button and it takes you right here, which is super handy to have. So next up, we have the add mod file. So this adds a mod from your hard drive. So if we go to my SSD and we go to, I think it's this folder here, mods. Maybe we don't have any in here, that's fine. I'm sure I have them somewhere. Anyway, you can add mods here. So if I go here, I think we have some mods, maybe? No, I don't know. We haven't got any mods at the moment, but basically what it lets you do is it lets you just add mods that you've downloaded from the zip files straight into Nexus Mod Manager. And the last button will just restart the program, which is very helpful. There you go. So the next things we have are a drop down here. So you'll see you can click install mod. You can create an empty mod, which is useful if you want to overwrite certain files. You don't really need to get into that for now, but it's useful in the future. You can enable all visible mods, disable all visible mods, check all of the mods for updates, which only works if you've downloaded them from the Nexus specifically. You can refresh the list, or you can export it to a CSV, which is similar to an Excel workbook and just keeps a massive list of basically what mods will where. So let's get started in adding a mod. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to keep this profile on default and then switch to Vampire Playthrough. Now, we're not actually going to be adding Vampire mods. It's just an example of what we're going to be doing. And we're going to switch back over to the Nexus now. Which is going to be handy. So let's pick a mod. So the most common mod that we're going to use is down here somewhere. There we go. Alternate start, live another life. This is a perfect mod to show off because it changes the immediate start in Skyrim. So it's very handy. So what we're going to do, we're going to click download Nexus Mod Manager. We're going to continue with the download. And you'll see here you get this little pop-up, Open NXM Link Proxy. Now, this should also happen in my Nexus Mod Manager video, but because I already had it set up, that doesn't work. But all we do is you click this button, you click Open NXM Link Proxy, and then we can swap over to Nexus, not Nexus Mod Manager, sorry, Mod Organizer. And once we do that, you'll see that on the download section, it's now downloaded. And you can see here that it says done, double click to install. If you look at this while it's downloading a mod, it will show you the download speed and such, which is very useful. So let's double click this to install it. And you see here, we get quick install. So if you know that a mod is set up correctly, for instance, most mods by Arthmore, who made this mod, are set up correctly, you can just hit OK. But some mods don't actually set up their file structure correctly, and that can confuse Mod Organizer. So what you want to do is click Manual. Now you see here, Mod Organizer has brought up a little part of the tutorial because it's super important that you read it. So I recommend, if you're doing this along with me, you read it and actually read what it says. But the basic gist is you've got to set up the data directory so that Mod Organizer knows where the files are going. So you can see here, you can drag and drop stuff. And what you can do is, when you right-click stuff, you get the set data directory. So, for instance, if I make a mod directory here and I just call it data, right? And I select all of this and I move it into that folder. You'll see now it says no game data on top level, which is how Skyrim works. So what we can do here is we can right-click that and set data directory, and then boom, it's working. Whenever it says looks good, that's when you know you can just hit install. Okay, so what I do whenever I'm installing a mod is, even if I know it's set up correctly, I'll just go into the manual mode and just double check to make sure, and then I'll hit OK. So now we have everything set up, we can hit OK, and then there we go. And you'll see a little message right at the bottom that says installation successful. Now we've got the mod installed, but we haven't got it activated. So you can see here, it's still not in this list. So what we're going to do, we're going to click the checkbox, and there you are. It shows up in the plugins list. You'll also note that in the data directory, it now shows up. Now you may be thinking, well, if it's there, it should be in the main Skyrim install, but it's actually not. So the way that works is basically it allows you to skip over that. So I'll show you now how that works. So if I just go into my Steam folder, Special Edition, Data, you can see that even though there is an ESM file, BSA file, all sorts of stuff here, it doesn't show up in my data directory, which is very handy if you fiddle around with files a lot and you don't want to reset stuff back to default. And the main benefit being is if your Skyrim install breaks, you just don't use the profile. Problem solved. Compared to Nexus Mod Manager, which means you have to go looking for all the different files that it's hidden away in all the folders. Nexus Mod Manager does that pretty badly, in my opinion. So, we've got our mod installed. We can see it in the data directory. It's now in the plugins directory. But if we swap over back to the default profile, you see now there's no checkbox. So it still lists all the mods that you have, but it isn't activated on this sidebar and it isn't activated on this profile. However, if we swap back to the vampire playthrough, you can see it is. So now we're ready to go on to the next step, which is loot. So as you'll all remember, we need to run loot. So we've already got it set up here. You can just click this edit button and it brings up the same window that we had before and set it up. And then we click run. You see here, Steam is required to start running. We're just going to say yes to getting it to run Steam. That's because I don't have Steam running. So it'll bring up this window. You wait for Steam to launch, and then we're going to set up all the files. There we are. So I just put in my info. Get my Steam Guard code, which I'll do on the other screen so you can't see it. There we go. And then we'll launch into Steam. So now we're just going to wait for it to load, and then we'll go back to Nexus Mod Manager, or sorry, Mod Organizer. It's useful to have Steam running before you do this. I didn't because I just started up my computer. There we go. So we can see here I've got my library, and right at the top, I have Skyrim Special Edition. There we go. Now we can hit OK, and hopefully loot will start running. There we are. So there we go. So because it's recognizing this as the first time we've launched loot, it's telling us how to use it. Okay, it does have a new release available, but we're not going to use that right now because we don't need it. And we're going to do the same thing we did before, which is click sort plugins, and it will download the master list, which is basically the order everything should be in, and it will organize our mods for us. Then we hit apply, which again, in this case, won't happen because there is no model to change. But normally you'd hit apply and then you're ready to go. And all we're going to do, we're going to click Skyrim Special Edition. We're going to hit run. And now we wait. Okay, so as you can see, we're back in game now. And if we click load, you can see all of our previous, our previous setup. We're going to create a new character. And you see here, start a new game, mods are currently loaded. That's fine. So we should be put into the alternate start setup room, which we are. That means the mod is successfully installed, and we can just make a quick character here and go, yes, test, and voila, here we go. So we can now go on and, start a new game, and it's all ready to go. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions regarding the video or any mod setup problems, do let me know in the comments or send me a message. I do try to read everything, so if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Please let me know if you liked this video. If you did, please leave it a like. If you didn't, dislike is just next to it. And if you want to see more of this content, I really recommend you subscribe because I bring out more info later on down the line. Videos have been a bit short at the moment because of assignments and stuff at university, but I do plan to do lots of mod spotlight videos in the coming few months, which would be really great. And then hopefully in March we can talk about SKSE, which is one of the biggest resources for modding. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.